in the G.I. Joe comics. Snake Eyes is one of those characters that's had kind of a mysterious past. It was famously known as the Silent Ninja.
This is morning light.
Larry Hama really blossomed the character within an issue called The Silent Interlude, which had no words, just pictures.
When I did the comic, I made it character-centric. I came up with the backstory of Storm Shadow, takes Snake Eyes into the clan.
Larry Hama created the modern-day version of what we know G.I. Joe to be.
We try to find a balance between what is pre-existing G.I. Joe lore, but also finding a way of updating it, giving people more.
That opened up a world of opportunity. Let's do the origin story before he's lost his voice.
Let's go.
Shooting in Japan is super important for driving the story.
When you go to Japan, there's some energy that you pick up from actually being there.
I'm super excited for people to see what we're building. This is literally a stepping stone into the G.I. Joe universe.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my Snake Eyes movie trailer video for the G.I. Joe origin story. As you can tell, this is meant to be a new origin for a new version of a G.I. Joe cinematic universe. And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe! Everyone posts all the memes, so if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I'm sure at some point in everyone's history here, no matter how old you are, you've encountered a version of G.I. Joe. Whether you just watched the films from the early 2000s, the cartoon series, or if you watched the OG classic cartoon series, or if you're even older and you actually had some of the larger toys that predated the G.I. Joe Real American Hero line. When most people think of the classic G.I. Joe stories, you're actually thinking about the 1980s G.I. Joe Real American Hero story that was actually created by Larry Hama for Marvel Comics as part of the brand new rebooted toy line that Hasbro was introducing. We're talking the classic era of Saturday morning cartoons here. That original Larry Hama G.I. Joe Marvel comic book was actually the first one that was ever advertised on television as part of that animated series. And if you don't remember, they actually did an animated movie based on that series a long time ago. It was in 1987. It's kind of hard to track down, but I think it's on Amazon at the moment. But the whole idea is that they're trying to reinvigorate the G.I. Joe IP, so this is meant to be a new origin for new versions of all these characters, and they just wanted to start with a single character instead of trying to do a straight-up, full-blown G.I. Joe movie. But as you can see, there are a bunch of classic G.I. Joe characters in this. Like you even have the Baroness, so you have some Cobra characters. You have Scarlet, that's your G.I. Joe character right there. The reason why Scarlet is in this is because she has history with Snake Eyes that predates G.I. Joe. There have been a lot of different versions of their backstories in the comics, but this is mostly going to be referencing the classic Larry Hama version, because as you can see from the featurette, they basically brought him onto the movie to help them sort of move the timeline into present day. So all these origin stories that they're doing, like the Snake Eyes origin story, is based on the classic version, just updated with modern references. So if it's been a hot minute since you've seen that classic animated series, or if you never read the original comics or anything like that, the whole idea is that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were actually squad mates during the Vietnam War in the 1970s because it was meant to be an origin story for the 1980s version of the character. Obviously, he's not meant to be mute during this. They'll show you how he became mute eventually. I don't know if they'll do it in this film or one of the sequels, but the whole idea is that when Zartan was killing his master, he shot Snake Eyes in the throat to keep him from shouting out to warn him so that he could save himself. So he's mute because he got shot in the throat. And the funny story about them actually creating his iconic black suit that he wears, it looks so badass, is they actually said it was based on this really weird situation that they ran into with manufacturing the toy line. I believe the story was they were trying to sell an extra action figure as part of the new 1980s rebooted toy line, but in order for it to be profitable enough for them to justify doing it, they actually had to find a way to make the action figure without spending money on a bunch of dye for the actual plastic parts of the figure. So they said, what if we don't color the action figure at all? We'll just release a black action figure, uncolored essentially. So that's like a version of the real story of how he wound up getting that black costume. But the reason why they wanted to do Snake Eyes as this new origin story is because he's probably one of the most badass characters of all time in the G.I. Joe line. So even though they don't totally clarify where he was before he joined the Arashikage here, it sounds like maybe they'll use the war in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan or one of the more recent conflicts around the globe. Then he meets Tommy, Storm Shadow. Storm Shadow's real name is Tommy Arashikage, and Tommy offers him a place in the Arashikage, so he brings him to Japan here. So in telling the origin of Snake Eyes, they're also giving an origin story for Storm Shadow as well, so they can kind of explain their relationship in present day and why they're such bitter rivals, but also do a version of an origin story for some of the G.I. Joe characters like Scarlet and some of the Cobra characters like the Baroness. The actual synopsis for the movie just reads, an ancient Japanese clan called the Arashikage welcomes tenacious loner Snake Eyes after he saves the life of the heir apparent, that's Storm Shadow that they're talking about. Upon arrival in Japan, the Arashikage teach him the ways of the ninja warrior, while also providing him something he's been longing for, a home. However, when secrets from Snake Eyes' past are revealed, his honor and allegiance get tested, even if that means losing the trust of those closest to him. But Henry Golding said this opening fight scene from the trailer is just supposed to be them showing you some classic Snake Eyes moves. Like they wanted to do the classic Uzi shot from the original series. But you have a couple Arashikage characters like Storm Shadow, and Akiko is the other character here. You see her in the later trailer. She's one of the fellow ninjas training as part of the Arashikage under Blind Master. She might be a version of the Jinx character that was played by Elodie Yung during the G.I. Joe Retaliation movie. Most of you probably remember her more recently, though, as Elektra from Marvel's Daredevil on Netflix and The Defenders. She actually kind of feels like an Elektra-type character. So even though this version of the character is named Akiko, I think it's meant to be the same concept. Peter Mensah is playing their Blind Master. Most of you probably know a version of that original origin story that sort of sets up the idea of their rivalry. During the animated series and some of the later stories, they flash back to explain what their big falling out was, but this movie is meant to give you like the full version of that. Because in the classic comics, like they featured the classic comic with Larry Hama where he told his origin story, they give you sort of a short version of that. This is just meant to be the full version. Originally, the story is that Storm Shadow's character, who's known as Soft Master within the Arashikage, wanted their sensei, Blind Master, to teach them the 7th step to the sun technique, which would allow you to kill your opponent within 7 blows. In that version of the story, Blind Master is supposed to be his uncle, so they're actually family members. Like Storm Shadow's real last name is Arashikage after the name of the clan. They call him the heir apparent during this movie, so like he's supposed to eventually take over the clan someday. But their sensei Blind Master refuses to teach him the move and instead seems like he favors Snake Eyes, so they try to set it up as this big jealousy thing with Storm Shadow being jealous of Snake Eyes and killing their sensei Blind Master in revenge. Snake Eyes retaliates to try and get revenge for the death of their master, blames Storm Shadow thinking that he killed their master this whole time, so that also extends into present day. He holds this grudge against him for the rest of their life. But then later it's found out that Zartan, as part of Cobra, was actually manipulating things from behind the scenes, and he's the person that really killed their master. So it's just a way to show you that even though they have this intense rivalry that extends into present day when they're part of G.I. Joe and part of Cobra, they still have this deep connection to each other, so they're going to try and develop that during this movie. It's sort of like Captain America and the Winter Soldier after they meet again, after Bucky has become Winter Soldier and killed a ton of people. Like, he's my friend, even though he's done a lot of really, really bad stuff. You see a couple different fights with Storm Shadow on his own fighting the other Yakuza. Interestingly enough, they did not reveal who the main villain of the movie is going to be, if it's going to be somehow related to the rise of Cobra in the background, if they're trying to develop a new version of an origin story for that organization and those characters. I know there'll be a lot of comparisons with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, another big martial arts-based movie that's coming out just a little while after this. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is coming out in September. This is coming out at the end of July, right after the Black Widow movie. The big difference is that Snake Eyes is drawing more on Japanese history with ninjutsu, and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is drawing more on Chinese history and mythology through Kung Fu. The funny thing about Shang-Chi is that you'll recognize they used the exact same music track in this trailer that they used in the Shang-Chi trailer they released a little while ago. The whole idea with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the character Shang-Chi actually comes from a comic book that was titled Master of Kung Fu, but he was sort of Marvel's version of Bruce Lee. So interesting coincidence that Larry Hama, who was actually an editor at Marvel when he started that classic G.I. Joe comic book, so it all goes back to Marvel in the end. Even though the history of G.I. Joe predates Marvel Comics by a lot. Like G.I. Joe goes back to the 1940s. There was the original line of action figures, the really big ones. Maybe some of you, if you're a little bit older, you had one of those. Like even my grandpa, who fought during the Korean War in the 1950s, grew up with a version of G.I. Joe. So far, the movie seems pretty decent. I think they made the right call in trying to sort of reboot the G.I. Joe universe and start with the cooler characters and just focus on individual characters instead of trying to do everything all at once. I think the idea is they have direct Snake Eyes sequels, and then eventually you'll start seeing some of the other G.I. Joe characters, the other Cobra characters. Then within like 3 or 4 years, maybe way down the road, you'll actually see a brand new, full-blown G.I. Joe movie. Like they're gonna do it the Marvel Avengers route. You do the individual character movies, then you build up to the team-up movie. Their version of Avengers would be a G.I. Joe film. So even more Marvel references, like based on a story that was done for Marvel Comics, now doing the movies in the Marvel movie way. And even way back when they were getting ready to cast Channing Tatum as a version of Duke, Chris Evans was supposedly up for a role as that character before they went on Channing Tatum. And if you don't remember, Ray Park, Darth Maul himself, played that version of Snake Eyes in those 2000s movies. But everyone post all your reactions in the comments below. Let me know what else do you want them to do with the G.I. Joe IP, just because this is the brand new beginning of a new cinematic universe. The only big cameos that I'm expecting during the movie would probably be like Larry Hama himself in the background of one of the shots. He's sort of like the Stan Lee of the G.I. Joe universe. We also have Marvel Loki episodes that are going to start releasing in a couple weeks. I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, so make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss any of that. While you wait for everything, click here for that brand new Loki trailer and Easter eggs, and click here for my brand new Eternals teaser trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.